Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Friday morning, February the 11th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blog.com, and chat room is open there. And yesterday my show only streamed for about a minute, and then the sound got cut off. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I'm going to sort of try to keep an eye on it today. Hopefully you can hear me and understand what I'm saying. I'm still getting over this bad cold that I got. I don't know what it was, really a cold or infection or something, but my voice is just terrible this morning, so hopefully you can hear me. And I was talking about child trauma from the Child Trauma Academy, and this particular PDF talks about attachment and bonding and whatnot, and sort of just starts into the whole issue of what happens to a child who's been maltreated or abused, and the trauma they experience, and the whole issue of not forming a proper attachments and bonding and whatnot. So hopefully everybody will get something out of this. This is a pretty interesting article, and I thought it was quite interesting myself because just from my situation, you know what I mean. So I'm not a counselor or therapist, so you have to listen at your own discretion. I know I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows here, and I started over a year ago, November 2009, and I had no idea how long I'd be doing these shows and whether anybody would be listening or finding it helpful or useful. And so I appreciate everybody who's tuning in. Thank you very much for listening to my shows and kind of coming along with me on this journey of mine, this healing journey. So hopefully it's helping somebody. But you have to do it at your own discretion, because I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a very sensitive subject, and the topic is very sensitive, makes many people uncomfortable. So you have to know what to listen to, and you have to listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows from your parents or a caregiver, or somebody who's old, who can help you make the decision whether it's age appropriate for you, because there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and I just believe in protecting children at all times. I'm the Canada Regional Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and we're standing up, to try to save children's lives. We're all volunteers, and we work, 7 days all the time volunteering to try to get this information out to people. You need to keep yourself safe when you're online. So young people, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, okay? So we'll get right into this particular article here. The Child Trauma Academy put out a PDF at www.childtraumaacademy.org. This PDF, you can find it on their website, called Bonding and Attachment in Maltreated Children, Consequences of Emotional Neglect in Childhood. And I kind of want to take a look at this. This was written by Bruce D. Perry, MD, PhD, because this sort of stuff is really interesting to me, because I know yesterday I was really talking about the whole issue of, of being born. My mom was 38 years old when I was born. I was the last of 7 children that made it. My mom had 10 children, but only 7 of us lived. There may have been even more, but there was 10 that I knew about. And she was not emotionally stable enough to even raise me, as and having another infant at the age of 38 years old. She was already manic depressive. I was born out of marital rape, so she did not want me. She didn't want a couple of the other siblings before me either, so it wasn't just me. But she really made it a point to tell me that she did not want me, that she could not love me, and that I was just a nuisance and a hassle for her. And to grow up stuff, you don't form like a special bond, with hearing that kind of stuff. My mother did not allow for an attachment or a bond between me and her, right? So sort of we were yesterday, and of course, sadly enough, that information just didn't record. So I don't know if the people who were listening live actually caught that, but I was really kind of going into that whole situation, because it's very serious. Like when this particular PDF here is very interesting. What this Dr. this MD says about attachment, that it's necessary. It says these relationships are absolutely necessary for any of us to survive, learn, work, love, and procreate. Human relationships take many forms, but the most intense, most pleasurable, and most painful are those relationships with family, friends, and loved ones. And he says, within this inner circle of intimate relationships, we are bonded to each other with emotional glue, bonded with love. And so he sort of goes on to talk about that why we actually need these attachments, especially the maternal attachment. And so what is attachment? He says here, a special enduring form of emotional relationship with a specific person, involves soothing, comfort, and pleasure. Loss or threat of loss of the specific person evokes distress, and the child finds security and safety in the context of this relationship. So looking at, what is a healthy attachment, what is a healthy bonding, right? That's what he's going on to talk about here. And so they said, what is bonding? Simply stated, bonding is the process of forming an attachment. So bonding, therefore, is a set of behaviors that lead to emotional connection with attachment. So the child, the little infant who need bond in that attachment, because they need that attachment, right? It's very important for little infants to have that. Attachments is most certainly genetically determined. The drive to survive is basic in all species. And he says infants are defenseless and must depend upon a caregiving. It is in the context of this primary dependence and the maternal dependence that a relationship develops. And so he says this attachment is crucial for survival. An emotionally and physically healthy mother will be drawn to her infant. She will feel a physical longing to still cuddle, rock, coo, and kiss her infant. Smiling. Most behaviors bring pleasure, soothing, and the infant's behaviors bring pleasure and satisfaction to the mother. So this reciprocal feedback loop is what attachment develops. And that's what I was talking about yesterday. Just talking about the mother. Okay, yep, then my sound was gone again, so I'm not sure why, but I am having a real issue with Skype and radio, which I never, so I don't know what the problem is or what the issue is. It could be a lot of abuse going on, a lot of dysfunction, probably mental illness like there was in my home. My mom was not coping well. She was having a lot of problems with my dad, and the family was already a mess before I came along, many years before I came along. And so I was born into this situation where, there was really by the time I came around, my mom just didn't have any patience for any more children, had lost two babies right before me, a couple of years before me, in a row, 2 years in a row, had lost two babies who had been born stillborn. So she actually went into labor and had these babies, and they were stillborn. So by the time I came along, she was out of her head. She didn't know what she was doing. She really didn't want another child. My dad was forcing himself on her, so therefore, that's a harsh reality for a child. I read other survivor stories about children who had many children that are born due to rape. A woman being raped and then having to carry this child, and then having to find some sort of love in her heart for this child. Many women do, because they have such a capacity for love that even though the child was born out of rape, many mothers still have the capability and the capacity to love that child, and then they make the best of it, and they bring that child up in a really loving environment, and they don't want that child to ever know that they came from such a heinous act of rape, right? But my mom, on the other hand, was not capable of doing that. She wasn't capable of separating that, what I mean, from the actual act from me, what I mean. So she couldn't look at me and say, oh, even though my baby was brought about in a tragic situation where I've been maritally raped by my husband, who refuses to allow me to say no, because it's my own body. Instead of that, she made me pay for that, see. And so, she literally would tell me that I was born out of rape and that she didn't want me and stuff. And usually when she was mad and beating on me or throwing me around or slapping me in the face or whatever, horrifying, right, for a child to have to know that, right? And eventually you start to think, well, fine, you know what I mean? If you don't want me, well then, what am I, just useless, just worthless? And the rest of the family, everybody was in such a bad mess in that home that the other people couldn't really make up for it either, right? My siblings. So, you grow up like that, you do form a bit of an attitude, right? And then, of course, because my attitude was bad, it gave my parents a really good reason to beat on me and call me names and slap me around and threaten to throw me out of the house and physically throw me out of the house sometimes when I was a teenager. So, what do they expect? A parent treating you like that, a parent treating their children like that, and then, or a child like that, and then expecting that child to thrive and to grow and to, have a good attitude. It just isn't going to happen. So what my parents did was they abused us and then expected us to be these perfect, normal children that should just have been just so happy and so normal, and they couldn't figure out why we weren't like that, you know what I mean? Because they wouldn't take no responsibility for their actions, and that was the issue. My parents did not take responsibility for what they did to us, and they actually used to blame each other for it. My mom would say, well, it's all your father's fault. He's just he's a bad man, and he's abusive, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, she'd say, I never hit the children, which was a lie, because my brothers, I used to witness the beatings that my mom would be dishing out. And I knew what she was doing to me, you know what I mean? But in her mind, see, she was this perfect mother in her mind, right? She was very mentally ill. And my dad, he never took responsibility for it either. Oh, it's all your mother's fault. Right? My dad would we'd be driving down the road and he'd be like, let's leave your mother, let's go to California, trying to drive off with me, which, really, even though my mom was my main abuser, I would have much rather been raised by my mother. That was the whole issue, because my dad was absolutely insane. So I thought, oh yeah, no, I threatened to jump out of the car. I was 5 years old. I was like, if we don't turn around and go home, I'm jumping out. I was ready to open the door and just heave myself out onto the road, because I really did not want to go to California with that man, because he was very sick and twisted, and he had raped my mother in front of me. So I mean, I did not trust him. I didn't love him. There was no attachment between my dad and myself. We actually have no attachment to this day. And the only reason that I have anything to do with him at all, which I don't now because I've cut him completely off, that I had anything to do with him really was because I was always thinking, well, as an adult thinking, well, we could try to repair this relationship that was never ever really right, But since he's almost 90 and he's so mentally ill still, it's never going to happen. And I had to get a grip on that in this last year. That's what I've been doing. So if you go back and you listen to all my blog talk shows, which is a lot of work, I really detailed that in many of those blog talk shows, because, it's a huge issue. No attachment with no parent. So I kind of know, what that feels like, to not have, even though I grew up in a home with two parents and a whole bunch of siblings, really we had no attachments, and there's no bond. And the only attachments and bond that we had was very dysfunctional and not normal, So it's really bizarre, what happens there. And I mean, yesterday I was sort of really talking about the whole issue of how long it really has taken me to even begin to feel like a sane, normal person. It really took me to my 30s, really. Even my 20s, parts of my 20s were good, parts of my 30s were good, but the underlying issues were always still there, and I'd still be sitting on the couch or wherever I was living at the time, sitting there at the end of the day, knowing what happened to my family, knowing what happened to me, and knowing what I lost out on as a child, and sitting there just feeling, very just grieving and not really knowing how to handle things, because I didn't start my healing journey until 4 years ago. So now that I look back on it, I can really see the damage that was done was incredible, and it's horrible. I know so many people are going through this right now. That's why I'm doing these shows, really just to be another voice for people out there, so that they know, you need to allow yourself to heal, to find some help, whatever help that is, whether it's group support or self-help or online group support, counselor, therapist, whatever works for you. Because I never thought that I could get help. It was just not in the back of my mind that I could just get help. I had people tell me, "Oh, you should see a counselor. You should see a therapist or something." Because I would tell people about my situation. They would tell me about their abuse situations. I'd tell them about mine, and then they'd be like, "Well, you really need help. You're just too needy, and you need to go see a counselor." And they would divulge their stuff to me, and then when I told them about my story, they'd be like, "Oh, it's just too much. You got to go away." And so I've lost a lot of friends over that. Telling people. So I sort of stopped talking to people about it, and it's what are you supposed to do? These are people that you think you can trust, right? So you do have to be very careful where you get your help and who you talk to. I like online group support mainly because you can be anonymous, sort of, and you can divulge what you want to divulge when you want to divulge it. It's quite good for people who don't have a lot of time and who want to be able to just go online and if they're having a hard time or having a bad day, they can pop into these groups and these community forums. Even anonymously with a different name, and get some help from people, and be able to talk to people and get some validation from other people who have been through the same types of things and who are willing to acknowledge it. Because many times in our own families, there's nobody that's going to acknowledge the abuse. People love to hide this stuff away, and they don't because it's embarrassing. I mean, when people think about, like yesterday, I was talking about the fact that. My mom, when I was really little, like elementary school, was having so many problems and was so sick, not only physically sick, but mentally ill, that quite often I was going to school in my pajamas, right? And these long dresses that my mom would make, well, they were my pajamas, but then they weren't, because my mom actually would make them for either or. So I knew they were my pajamas because I used to sleep in them, but they were also, I'd wear them out or whatever, because she would make these long dresses for me like hers. And half the time I was going to school in these underwear, underwear that hadn't been changed for weeks. Nobody was making sure I was having baths. Nobody was making sure that I was putting on clean clothes. I was just going, on my own in that home, even though there was 5 siblings and 2 parents in that home. I was really kind of on my own unless I was beaten on, cursed at, yelled at, cussed at, spit on, kicked around, whatever, So I avoided my parents really because the interaction between my parents and myself wasn't good. It wasn't positive, and so I was pretty much on my own there most of the time, unless I was being mistreated. I wasn't being cuddled and pampered and told, "Oh, you're a good girl, you're a sweet girl. Here, let's get you some clean clothes." Oh no, there was none of that. So I grew up very distorted, very twisted, and it took me a long, long time to actually feel any kind of normalcy. I went from that into drug use. So I went right from that whole psychological trauma and abuse to doing heavy-duty drugs, until I was an older teen. But I seriously think that that's kind of almost what let me feel like I had some control in my life, because I could control what I was doing to my body instead of what my parents were doing to my body, what my brother was doing to my body, sexually using me, what my parents were doing to me, which was physical abuse. And I felt that I finally had some control over my body, and even though it was destructive, it gave me the sense of, I can do this to myself. You know what I mean? This is my choice to do these drugs, and it's my choice to hang around with these people, and this is who I choose. And the thing is that my friends were almost all of them were abused as well. So it was actually, I don't know, we used to talk to each other and actually try to help each other out. And for the most part, it was quite good. Even except for the drug use, I would never encourage that for anybody, But the thing is we made choices and we did what we did, but we were also there for each other, very supportive, and we all knew each other were suffering, and really were lacking in something. We were all lacking in love and care and nurturing. And by the time we became teenagers, everybody just thought we were a bunch of losers and we were just idiots. And look at those kids on the street hanging out. They're just stupid. And without even realizing what kind of homes we came from and what we would be walking into that night. Like I used to go in my house. I never knew what was going to be happening in my house or what was going to happen to me. And I mean, generally, by the time I got to be 15, 16 years old, I realized that my mom was not going to kill me, even though a couple of the beatings could have. she was just so violent, right? So I knew she wasn't going to kill me, but I used to think, who cares if they do anyway? By the time I hit that age, I really just didn't care whether I lived or died anyway, right? And that's what that kind of stuff will do to people, right? So it's so important for people, realize survivors out here. There's so many survivors, to get some help and not allow yourself to be destroyed by this, right? We certainly did not deserve this. No one does, right? And it's sad and pathetic that there's so many people who minimize abuse and like to make it look like it's no big deal. And that's why I say, if somebody wants to minimize abuse, come and talk to me. If you have about, if somebody has about, I don't know, a couple of years, I'll sit down and I'll tell you about it. You know what I mean? And how destructive it really is. It's horrific. And it's great to be able to count ourselves survivors. You know what I mean? For many years, I didn't feel that way. I really didn't even realize I was a survivor. I thought I was a victim of child abuse, right? So I was always feeling very, very much the victim, until 4 years ago when I said, man, no, I'm going to fight to live. This attitude came on. 4 years ago, I thought, why am I sitting here trying to, considering suicide and self-injuring myself? I really wanted to rip myself up with a screwdriver, all to show the pain in my heart, and what was going on inside of me. And I just thought, and then after that, I'd be thinking, well, I'm just planning my suicides again. And 4 years ago, I said, enough is enough. I cannot continue on this way. All I'm doing is allowing my parents to win this fight because I'm crippled in this life because of this abuse. Physically crippled as well as emotionally crippled, psychologically crippled in every way. My parents crippled me and crippled my family. They crippled our whole entire family, right? My parents did. And I blame them. I don't blame anybody else. My parents were responsible for that. And I wish that they would have taken some responsibility for it, but they never did. My dad is so mentally ill, he doesn't know what he did. He does know what he did, but I'm saying he pretends he doesn't know what he did. And he's so psyched out, but he's schizophrenic, right? And he's got all kinds of other issues too. So, he tries to pretend he's this lovely old man, and he just loved his wife so much. He said that at the funeral. It just pissed me off when my mom died. And after the funeral, he was telling everybody, I just loved my wife so much. And I was just sitting there cringing because I thought, oh, okay, you could say that after she's dead, but you could never, ever tell her that to her face. And you could never, ever tell her that you were sorry for raping her and slapping her around and beating on her children and hurting her children and hurting her. And you could never say that to her. But after she's dead, you can sit here and smile at the crowd and oh, I loved my wife. And he did the same thing when my brothers died. When my brothers died, he was like, oh, I loved my son. And he cried and he cried and he cried. I'm like, you bastard, man. For the treatment that he treated my brothers with, you know what I mean? And then for him to go and say, oh, I loved my sons, oh man, I'm telling you, the man is very sick. He's like the devil. When I was a little kid, I thought he was a devil, and I kind of still do. In the back of my mind, he sees demons. He has demons haunt him all the time. He's very much mentally ill. And when we were growing up, he was always, the devil's going to get me. And in the middle of the night, he'd be running down the freeway trying to kill himself. And he's twisted, and he really needed medication years and years ago. And the thing is the way that he treated his children and his wife, after they die, he says he loves them. Right? Now, that's just pathetic. But that's my parents. They were so screwed up. And, my mom, nobody cared that my brothers died. Well, they cried. They cried a little bit. Oh, boo-hoo, our sons are dead. But they would never take responsibility for what they did to them. It was always, well, we had the worst sons, we had the most loser children, and it's like, oh my God, after what you guys did to them. And that's why I decided to go public with my story, because 2 of my brothers went to their graves like that. And the world thought they were just a bunch of loser drug addicts who just couldn't get their stuff together, right? That's what the world figures, except for the people that knew about the child services, child protections, my parents being brought up on charges and whatnot. There were people that did know about that. They still pretend that they didn't know anything about that, but they do know, and they did know because they were there. And it's all denial. It's all people just wanting to deny, people wanting to believe something else because they don't want to believe the ugly truth. And I thought, man, I am going public with this, and I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to dedicate it to my 2 brothers who died because of what my parents did to them. People would say, well, no, they died because of the drug use. No, they died because they were killed when they were children. They were physically, emotionally, psychologically killed when they were children, and they had no way to know how to live as adults. And that's what happened to me, because at the age of 10 I wanted to die, and I used to tell my mother, go ahead and kill me, I'm dead anyway. As she's beating on me, I'd be like, just go ahead, kill me, please do. I want out. And I was 10 years old. No 10-year-old child should be feeling that way. And I know that so many other survivors have probably been there. It's absolutely horrific. And so for me to sit back and not say anything about this just because I don't want to hurt my family's feelings, what family? I mean, there's only 3 of us left. If you count my dad, that makes 4. And out of 10 people, or 10 people, and they're all in denial, whatever. You know what I mean? I decided, okay, I'm not staying silent just to appease a 90-year-old abuser man who raped his wife and beat on his children and beat on everybody else and his wife. Forget that crap. I thought, no, I'm going public with my story. So that's why I wrote my story, was mainly for my 2 brothers, who even the family would say were just losers. And even some of the family members that live today, because they don't really know the situation, nephews and whatnot. Well, 1 nephew in particular, but 2 also, because I have another nephew who's my brother's son, who's really just by adoptive, not by blood. He was adopted, that's all. Thing is he doesn't really feel an attachment to our side of the family, which is good, because he may as well not, because it was just a miserable mess anyway. But the whole issue is there's people that sit there and still would say that my brothers were just losers and they were just jerks and drug addicts, and they died because of their own issues and their own demise. And the thing is sure, they chose to do the drugs. They did what they did. They chose to have this horrible lifestyle. The thing is they had no ability to be able to form attachments. They could not find, they needed help, you know what I mean? And my parents were ordered to get us all family counseling, court-ordered counseling. We were all supposed to get counseling and get help. The social services were stepping in for a couple of years, monitoring the situation. My parents were brought up on major abuse charges, and my parents refused to get us any help. And then we left the country, and there you go. We slipped out of the system, and my brothers suffered because they never got any help. The whole issue is I was willing to hang on long enough to allow myself to go through each day, whether it was bad or not, and just keep going, right? And I got off the drugs at the age of 21, which is great. Not many people will do that, but it's I made a choice. I said, okay, these drugs are going to kill me. I know they're going to kill me. So I had been doing them for 9 years, and I thought if I don't get off the drugs, I was doing crank and speed and cocaine and crystal meth and everything else, acid and all kinds of horrible drugs. And I knew they were going to kill me. So but at the age of 21, I said, that's it, no more. And I got myself cleaned up. So the issue is we have to make choices for ourselves. We do have to make choices for ourselves, and we have to learn to care about ourselves, right? So that's why I hope you will tune in Monday morning. Not Monday morning. Well, yeah, Monday morning. I'll be on Monday morning as well, February 14th. But Monday night, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, Ray Luskin's coming on to talk with me. We're going to talk about self-care, nurturing, learning how to take care of ourselves as survivors, adult survivors of child abuse, right? Ray Luskin, she's awesome. I hope you will come check that out. Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here on Blog Talk Radio at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, February the 14th. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. If you need something, I'm always around, even on the weekend, checking my Blog Talk pages and whatnot. So you can leave me a message if you need something or if you want some of the information that I have. We'll continue on with this child trauma stuff next week, and I wanted really to get into the whole issue of maltreated, abused children and trauma, because that's what I went through. So we'll look at that next week as well. So have a great day, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. Hang in there. And you know what? Don't ever give up. I wish I could have reached my brothers. That's why I'm doing these shows. It's very important. I wished I could have reached my brothers so they wouldn't have killed themselves. And, you can't go back and change the past. But you can change how you feel today, and you can change how you feel tomorrow about yourself. And you can care enough to stick around and have a good life. See, what I'm doing is I'm having a great life now because it's a slap in the face to my parents, right? It's such a slap in the face that I didn't kill myself, that I didn't injure myself, and then they couldn't kill me. See, if I would have killed myself, they would have won. They'd have been like, ha ha, we got her in the end. You know what? Because that's what they did, wanted us dead. I really present this out to the public because I want people to know the truth. And, they wanted us to die. They wanted us dead when we were small children. And then didn't treat us any better when we were adults or young adults. So what I'm saying is, if I was to kill myself or self-injure, all I'm doing is allowing my parents to win this fight. And by me saying, no, I'm going to have a good life. I'm going to feel good about myself, love myself, take good care of myself, really learn how to take good care of myself, which I'm still working on. But I've got the nurturing stuff down. I got the self-love thing down. So one day at a time, right? So you get some help, whether it's calling a crisis line, if you can't reach somebody, or getting involved on online group support, getting involved in a community group support type thing, or if you're not into that, just counseling, therapist, right, one-on-one. Just make sure you do get some help because you do deserve to stick around. You do deserve to have a better life. And I'm telling you, don't give up. Not ever, ever, ever. We have to go through the bad days too, right? But there are better days, but only if we actually choose to look for them and seek them out, right? So have a good day, everybody. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.